Hey everybody, what's going on? Eric here with Switch Adapted Toys, and today I'm going to be showing you how to adapt the Hot Wheels Roller Coaster Rally. This is a really fun toy, and the good news is it is really easy to adapt, and I'll walk you through the whole process. But before we get into it, if you like this video or if you find it helpful, make sure you hit the like button and hit subscribe. It really does help us out in a huge way, so thank you in advance for that. But also it just keeps you up to date on all our latest videos. If you've never heard about Switch Adapted Toys or you just stumbled across this video, Switch Adapted Toys is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and our whole mission is to make play possible for kids of all abilities. We do that by creating these how-to videos. We've got written manuals, we've got files for you to 3D print your own Switch button, and all our resources are completely free on our website, which is www.switchtoys.org. So if that's something that interests you, I encourage you to check that out. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. Alright, so we only really need to adapt this part of the toy. You don't need the whole thing assembled. And what we're going to basically do is adapt this switch. This is just the on-off switch. And what we're going to do is get inside and wire our headphone jack wires to the switch so that whenever we press our button, it basically bypasses that switch and turns the toy on. So what we need to do is turn the toy over and remove the 4 screws on the back of the toy. Alright, so with those screws removed, we can remove this plate here. And inside here you can see the yellow switch. There's 2 screws that hold it down. So I'm going to try to get that switch out without removing this motor assembly. I think I'll be able to do it, but I have not done this toy before, so we'll find out. Alright, so with those 2 screws removed, I think I can get this switch free. I could probably solder it in place, but I think it's just going to be a little bit easier to show you what's going on if I can get it out of here. Alright, so just like that, I've got that switch out, and now you can see there's 2 wires, this red wire and this blue wire that are go to the switch, and that's basically where I'm going to solder my headphone jack wires to. Just to those 2 points there, and that will basically bypass that switch, and it's that easy. So the next thing we need to do is drill a hole so that we can get our headphone jack wire into the toy, and I think a good place to do that is going to be right here in the side. Coming out right here, I think that's as good a spot as any. So with a drill bit that's the same diameter of my headphone jack, I'm just going to drill a hole right through the side of the toy, making sure I don't hit that motor. Just like that. So next what I'm going to do is I'm going to fish my headphone jack wire through the toy. But what I have here is a mono headphone jack. So you can see there's just 2 wires, and this is really ideal. You can certainly do this with a stereo headphone jack. Basically you need to combine 2 of the wires. We've got a bunch of videos that show you how to use a stereo headphone jack. It is a little tricky because you got to make sure you get the right combination of wires, and in our other videos we show you how to do that. But for the sake of convenience, I think it's worth finding a mono headphone jack. It just makes things so much easier. So I'm just going to fish my wire through the hole that I drilled. So you can see my headphone jack wires have a little bit of solder on the tips already. What I like to do is add a little bit of extra solder to those wires because it just makes it easier when I go to actually solder it to the switch. So that's what I'm going to do now, is I'm just going to put a little bit of solder on each of the wires. And I promise, don't let this part scare you off from trying this. Soldering is really not that hard. I have no formal training in this. I'm not like an electrician or anything like that. All I'm basically doing is melting the solder onto the wire, and it's just that easy. I'm going to use a little bit of Scotch tape just to kind of hold that switch down so it doesn't move on me when I am soldering to it. And now all I'm going to do is heat up the solder that I have on the wire and get it to stick to the metal that's on the switch already. It shouldn't take much just to heat that up, just like that, and you can give your wires a little bit of a tug and just make sure that there is a good connection there. You want to kind of avoid heating it up too much because you could disconnect the wire that's already on the switch. If that happens, you just got to solder it back on. It's not a big deal. All right, just like that, we're soldered, and now we can test it and make sure it's going to work. All right, so I'm going to test this with one of our 3D printed switch buttons. You can find the files for these on our website. It's totally free. You can check that out. You can 3D print your own button, and honestly, it's a very good switch. So what I'm going to do is plug my button in and just give my button a press and make sure that it works. There we go. Works great. So what you may have noticed there is whenever I release my button, the toy turns off. So in order to get the cars kind of up that escalator, you're going to have to maintain pressure on the switch for the cars to travel up the track. So if your child struggles to maintain pressure on the switch, you might want to invest in a latch switch. And that's one that when you press the button, it stays on until you press the button again and turn it off. Unfortunately, ours don't do that, so if that's something you're interested in, you'll have to look elsewhere. But it might be a good option for this specific toy. All right, so now I need to get the switch kind of back into place so that I can screw it back down. Since we didn't remove that motor housing, this is going to be a little bit more challenging, but I think if you take your time, you can get it. There we go. All right, now I'm gonna kind of pull out the excess cord here. I need to prevent a child from like yanking this cord and just tearing the whole thing out. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put a zip tie around the wire on the inside of the toy, and that will basically act like a physical barrier so that if a child were to yank on it, it's gonna engage with this zip tie and prevent it from getting ripped out. So I'm just going to wrap this around and cinch it down really tight, kind of right up along the edge of the housing. And I'm going to cut off the extra zip tie. And then for a little bit of security, I like to put a little super glue or CA glue around that zip tie. Now I am like to the very last drop of my super glue, so I'm going to hopefully try not to make a mess here. But you just want to kind of put some super glue kind of around that zip tie to lock it into place. Go. And if you have any, you can use a little bit of activator and that will just instantly dry that super glue. And now we just need to replace the back plate and screw down those 4 screws. All right, so that's basically it. Let's plug in our button and just make sure that everything still works. There we go. What's nice about how we did this is that you can still use this on-off button if you choose. So you just turn it on, turn it off, everything still works, and it works with the button as well. All right, so I got it all assembled. Let's see how it works. All right, so that's basically it. If you like this video, if you find it helpful, make sure you hit the like button and hit subscribe. It really does help us out in a huge way, and that way you stay up to date on all our latest videos. Switch Adapted Toys is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and our whole mission is to make play possible for kids of all abilities. We do that by creating how-to videos like this. We've got written manuals, we've got files to 3D print your own switch button, and all of our resources are completely free. So if that's something you're interested in, I encourage you to check out our website at www.switchtoys.org. And if you've got a group or an organization and you want to adapt toys kind of on a bigger scale for kids in your community, you could form what we call a switch chapter. What we've done here locally in Columbia is we get about 100 to 200 toys every year, and we get community members to adapt them, and we give them away at Christmas time free of charge to those families. So we've kind of taken that model and we've kind of expanded across the country now. So if that's something that you're interested in bringing to your community, you can find out more information on our website. Again, it's www.switchtoys.org. Lastly, if you're interested in a Switch adapted toy but doing it yourself just isn't your thing, that is totally fine. We have an Etsy shop where I'll dab some toys for you, and they'll be ready to play with, and the proceeds help support what we're doing here. So it's a great way to get an adapted toy as well as help support Switch. So I'll put a link in the description below to our Etsy shop, and we also have some merch and some t-shirts and stuff like that. Again, just another way of help funding what we're doing here. So if that's something you're interested in, I encourage you to check that out as well. Well, I guess that's it. I'm Eric with Switch Adapted Toys, and we'll see you next time.
Switch Adapted Toys, making play possible.